I was convulsing in a stream of tears, curled up in a ball in the bottom of my shower. And I was shaking because everything that I thought I was, everything that I wanted to be, it was gone. Completely evaporated, crumbled beneath me. I just finished closing down my first business, my baby. And this is after years and years and years. I was working so hard and so focused on becoming this thing, this real estate investor, this real estate entrepreneur. And here I was putting a bullet into the head of my baby. That was probably one of the hardest decisions that I had made. And part of the reason why I made that decision was it was just eating me up inside. I was so driven and so focused on making money and the responsibility that I felt having this company to have to make sales, to have to bring revenue in, to have to be for other people. I was young. I was in my 20s. I felt like I had grown up too soon. And for so many years, I never gave myself an opportunity to enjoy the rewards, to give myself what I feel like I needed for so long. Travel, discover and explore my gifts, take time for myself, write. There were so many things that I prevented myself from doing and experiencing because if I went away, if I left, I would have been fearful, I would have been worried that my business would fall apart without me. And one of my coaches says, we give ourselves what we feel we deserve. So for years, I never felt that I deserved to enjoy what I had created. Instead, I was just addicted to the chase and telling myself that this deal, the next opportunity would be the one that would liberate me, that would free me, that would give me that excuse, that freedom to finally just enjoy myself, to relax, to be 24, 25, whatever it was. But doing that for so long, it just created this resentment. I had resentment for my own company, my own business. In the beginning, it was so magical. Creating something out of nothing, using my mind to create income, to not have to rely on anybody else, to not have to have a boss, to write the website content, to come up with how we put these deals together, to build the relationships with the people who would then buy those deals and create an income for us. It was magical. There was so much creation. There was so much creativity. There was so much excitement because it was so new. And all of that was gone. And for months and months, I was wondering what was this missing hole. And I had worked with one of my other coaches for a few months, which really deepened my awareness. It really helped me look at my life and my business in a completely different way, in a way where I was questioning my own authenticity. I was questioning, is this really all there is? Which is a crazy thing to ask when for so many years of my life, I thought this was the thing that I was going to be for the rest of my life. I thought I was going to be the next Donald Trump. I thought for the next 60 years, this is my first and last business. Every other company is just going to grow and sprout out from this. But that wasn't the case. I was writing in my journal one day, frustrated and lost and confused and feeling directionless. Why could I not create momentum again in my business? Why can't I access that passion? Why can't I feel better about what I was creating? I was completely lost. And so usually my go-to therapist was my journal. That's the cheapest form of therapy for me. And it was April 2012, and I was writing in my journal, stream of consciousness, emptying my mind onto the page. And literally, I just found myself with my hand independently spilling ink all over the page. And then I wrote, maybe I just don't give a shit about this company anymore. And it sent shivers through my entire body. It was this surge of energy, this feeling of lightness that I was overcome by in my entire body. It was like I've been wanting to say this for months, maybe over a year, but I would never even let myself think it. I would never let myself say it. I would never let myself write it until this point. And right then and there, that's when I knew that something needed to change. That was the shift inside of me. Something clicked. I knew that if I looked from the bird's eye view, there was a before April 2012, and there is an after April 2012. I could not go back and reinvigorate my passion for this business knowing what I knew. I no longer gave a shit. Why the fuck would I go and pursue and do this thing when it's completely fake? It took me 7 days. I spoke to my business partner. I spoke to our clients, our investors. I spoke to all the potential customers, all the people who sent leads to us, all those mortgage agents. I sent them an email. I called them. I had the most embarrassing but relieving conversation that we're done. We're no longer taking applicants. We're no longer in business. We're done. I'm done. And it was all really in cold blood. It was doing it in such a surgical way out of survival. I really did not want to allow myself to feel anything until it was just completely done. I knew I needed to just execute, take action, have the conversation, move it forward, close this thing down. It was a huge relief. It felt really good. It felt so refreshing to finally make an authentic decision for myself to do something for me. I would have these visions of, finally, I'll be able to do these things for the sake of myself and not for the sake of others. Something out of Atlas Shrugged. And although I had this new freedom, I had this new independence, everything was still a blank slate. The thing that I didn't really account for was a tremendous amount of grief, was a tremendous feeling of loss, that something that I had birthed, something that I had created is now gone. Everything that I identified with, real estate, having a real estate network, all of my marketing, all of my branding, the entire conversation around my life has been about real estate. And all of a sudden, what's it going to be about now? Who the fuck am I? What do I want to do with my life? And not only that, it had been months since we had done a deal, since we had brought money in. And I was literally watching my bank accounts start to dwindle, started to see them go down, get obliterated, decimated. And that's when things started to spiral out of control. That's when things started to really get to a point where I had no idea what I'm supposed to do. I was so lost. All I knew was I was depressed, that I felt empty, that every single day felt like a blur. It was really hard to get out of bed. It was hard to be productive. I couldn't write in my journal anymore. I couldn't read books. And when I was around other people, I just pretended like I was okay. Everything is fine. And I was really good at pretending. But behind the scenes, I was just like a lost soul walking around the streets, literally just going through the motions. Go to the coffee shop, have an espresso, get a slice of pizza, go do a yoga class. But other than that, like I was barely there. And so as this was happening, I had the reality of my financial situation. Luckily, I was living with my parents at the time. But during that time, I just saw the worst that I could have seen in terms of circumstances. And it was so difficult to be with. I had $20,000 of credit card debt in 4 different credit cards. People were calling me for that money. My phone would be threatened to be canceled. And I would beg and plead with my phone provider, telling them my situation and trying to put off canceling my service because I needed it. What if I had an opportunity? What if I had got a new job? What if whatever? And I'd be driving around and my gas light would constantly be on. I'd put in a couple bucks at a time to fill up, get what I needed. It was shit. It was complete shit. Literally the only relief that I had was practicing yoga. I had this unlimited yoga pass to a local studio, and it was just these hot classes with such incredible, beautiful teachers. And so every day I would go and I would practice and I would stretch and I would balance and I would lay down and I would sweat and I would just wring it all out as an escape, as a way out of my reality, to not have to think about what was going on in my bank account, what was the voicemails being left on my phone about all the people who are after me, all the shit that I was in. So I decided to escape. But what was really interesting, what was really cool was that in that practice, in that escape, I was connected. I was connected to my body. And I couldn't escape that. I couldn't escape the sensations that were happening throughout my body. And I remember one time when it really flipped something, a new switch in my head. It was another epiphany. It was a grueling class. I must have sweat like 1 or 2 pounds of water. And my teacher just has this soothing voice and fiery voice and just inspired the shit out of me. And I moved and I breathed and I was completely lost. But by the end of it, when I was in Savasana, that final resting pose, I had this warmth, not just from the hot room, but I had this warmth, like right in the center of my chest. I could actually feel it right now. And I just had this intense sense of joy. This intense feeling that I could appreciate my body. I could appreciate my life. I had gratitude. And I was like, holy shit, really? Like, where did that come from? Where have you been? That emotion has not been in my body, in my psyche, for who knows how long. And here I am. My existence feels like hell on earth. My reality and my circumstances were a tremendous challenge, a tremendous obstacle to overcome. but I could feel appreciation. I could feel joy. I can feel love. That was a fucking epiphany. That was an awakening. And what that awoke in me was to begin practicing gratitude again, to begin a practice of tuning in and checking in with my emotions and seeing if, can I find things that I can be grateful for in my life? Yeah, everything is kind of crap, everything is kind of shit, but are there not things that I can be grateful for? Thank you to my parents who let me live in their house and support me and provide resources and feed me. Thank you to the friends around me who were supportive, who listened to me when I was actually available and vulnerable and willing to open up and share with them. Thank you for my car, it lets me get around. Like really simple things. Thank you for my breath. Thank you for my body. I finally had this new sense of self being created. And during that time, I had been just showing up and doing the same things, doing the same routines over and over again every single day. And it very much just revolved around yoga. And then it began to revolve around gratitude as well. And it started to wake up this voice inside me. It's almost like, that voice, that authentic voice inside that I hadn't heard since probably I decided to close down my company. And it said, you're the cause of your reality. You have all the tools, you have all the resources you need to transform your life. You have everything you need. And that was it was almost like every book I had read, all the coaching I had experienced, all the workshops, all the mentors, every single conversation, all culminated into that, is that I had the power. I could choose to stay or I can choose to change this. And literally, I was just reconnected with some of the most profound insights I got from my coach, which was focus on well-being. Your well-being is the foundation of your vision in action. Focus on integrity. Your ability to get results will be directly correlated to your levels of integrity. And to me, well-being, what I learned is well-being is something that we could access today. Well-being is something that we could experience right now. It's what we practice on a daily basis. It's not some future event. It's not something that's tied to something else that needs to happen or other conditions. But if I invest in myself, if I practice these few things every single day, that is my well-being. That's what I had control over. And integrity, that's literally just honoring my word, honoring my commitments, being complete and unbroken. And if I was going to set out a promise to do these 10 things every single day, that's integrity, right? If I get in communication with all these creditors about my situation and tell them my intention to pay and where I'm at and all that stuff, that's the process of getting in integrity, isn't it? So that's what I did. I just focused on practicing daily well-being and increasing my levels of integrity. And recently I learned the difference between belief and faith. And say what you want about faith and all the stigma and judgment that you have around that word. Let that go for a second. But literally all belief is that it has evidence. All faith is that there is no evidence. And so there was an aspect of trusting that if I focused on well-being and focused on integrity, that I had a sense of belief, like I had evidence from before that I would obviously feel better. Everything would start feeling like I had a little bit more energy, feel a little bit more resourceful. So I knew that. But there was an aspect of faith, of having no evidence. I've never been in this place where when I looked back months later, I realized that that's rock bottom. That was my rock bottom. And my faith in these two fundamental things to lead me to the breakthrough that I needed, that's all I had. Literally. That is all I had. I had nothing else. I was not open or vulnerable enough to not isolate, to share my suffering or share what was going on with other people. So not many people knew what I was going through. I went and did this completely on my own. And there I was every single day, checking these little things off. Sleep for 8 hours, sit for 5 minutes and meditate, read for 15 minutes, drink water. It really doesn't matter what's on it. It's just the practices that make you feel good. And then I had a list of all the things that were out of integrity in my life, and I made sure I was in conversation. I was in the process of getting complete. And I did that every single day. That was my commitment. I printed this piece of paper. I would check things off. I would have a score. I would score myself for the week. And that's all I focused on. Yeah, sure, I'd get distracted. Like, should I get a job? Should I start another business? Should I flip a house? What am I going to do? But I focused on these two things primarily. And what was hilarious is I started to feel so powerful. And it kind of went along those lines of after that yoga class, was that even though my circumstances were completely messed up and scary, I felt my gift. I felt my talent. I felt my skill. I knew I had energy. I knew I was a resource. I knew I was a creative. I had that confidence being built up inside of me. Like, I worked on myself first. I didn't think about the outside strategy or the outside circumstances. I focused on what I did have control, and that was me. So what's the point in this conversation? Well, I focused on these two things, well-being and integrity. And I felt better. And if I wasn't that person, if I wasn't coming from that place of well-being and integrity, I don't think the next couple of months, the last couple of years would have happened the way they've happened. Not all easy, not all amazing, but magical, incredible. I get a call, and here I am, not knowing how the hell I'm supposed to pay for stuff. I'm just constantly borrowing money from family to pay for bills and decreasing my monthly expenses as much as I could, because I had incurred a lot of expenses, a high burn rate. But I get a call, and my friend says my daughter wants to buy a house. Luckily, I had my real estate license. And I'm like, sure. What's that house? 123 Main Street, whatever it was. I look it up. It's $1 million house. Holy shit. I've never sold $1 million house. Most real estate investors are buying, $200,000, $300,000 houses. And the commission on $1 million house would be literally selling 3 or 4 houses. I go, I look at the house. I call his daughter. She buys it. That's a huge chunk of change coming to my bank account. Oh wait, she needs to sell a house too. Sell that house. Another friend calls. My parents want to sell their house. I sell their house. And it literally just happened one after another within a short period of time. And literally I made more money in those few weeks than I did an entire year in that business that I closed down, which was fucking amazing. Coming from rock bottom, and now I was through the roof. I think when we are committed to looking at ourselves, looking at what is in our power, and letting go of what's not in our power, that is where the opportunity begins to make a fundamental transformation. I believe that we need to stop looking at our outside circumstances. I think we need to let go of the vehicle as our sense of identity to leverage it and achieve our success. We need to let that go because it's not about the vehicle, it's about the fucking driver. And I can give you a client of mine who I had one session with, one conversation, who's turned that conversation into a $5 million a year business. I can give you his strategy for success and give it to you, but because of your ability to drive that vehicle, it probably won't succeed in the same way. The conversation that I want us to have is about who are we being as a cause of our reality. I'm so fucking bored of all the conversation around doing. You can be a doaholic, you can be a do monster, but if who you're being does not match that which you want to create, then you will not create it. It will not last. It's not going to happen in the way that you want. The fulfillment, the joy, the meaning will just be beyond your reach. We have to stop looking outwards. I think it's time for us to look in the mirror and realize that it's really up to us. What is our next reinvention? How do we become more of who we truly are? How do we recognize ourselves as a gift? Not that we have a gift, but that we are a gift. The reason I made this recording, which maybe will turn into a podcast, this random fall evening, is because I wish I had this type of conversation around years and years and years ago. I wish in my 20s that this conversation was happening in a way that was accessible and free and uplifting and insightful and actionable. That's why. If it turns into anything, I have no idea. My job here is to have the conversation with you and let go of control. To make these recordings when they feel good. To record when I have something to say. There's so much fucking noise out there. People talking, new books, new ideas, new strategies. There's lots of value there for sure. But I don't want to add to the noise. I don't want to make a recording and make a podcast just because I need to release it. But I promise you, when there is something to say, when there is something to be created, if there's an insight or a story, I will share it. I'll share it with you. All I ask is that you find a way to share it with somebody else. All I ask is you share it with somebody else and apply action to some of the insights that you gain. That's it.